The door creaked open like a confession I never meant to hear. And there she was, Aurora, my stepdaughter, frozen in the threshold of my bedroom, her eyes locking onto mine with the force of a summer storm over the Andalusian hills. I stood there, blouse half unbuttoned, the humid air of our rented villa in West Spain clinging to my skin like regret, my hands fumbling for the silk scarf I'd been about to tie around my neck. "Mom," she whispered, the word cracking like dry earth underfoot. Not the casual Elena she'd called me for years since her father left us both adrift in this expatriate life we'd pieced together from broken American dreams. I yanked the blouse closed, heat flooding my cheeks, not from shame, but from the raw ache of seeing her like this, all grown into a woman of 22. Her chestnut waves tousled from the sea breeze, those brown eyes that had once sparkled with childhood mischief now shadowed by something deeper, unspoken. We'd fled to this corner of Spain 2 years ago, after the divorce papers yellowed on the kitchen table back in Seattle, chasing the myth of reinvention amid olive groves and whitewashed villages. But reinvention? It was just another word for running, and now, in this sliver of afternoon light slanting through the shutters, the running had caught up to us both. "Aurora, honey, give me a second," I managed, my voice steadier than I felt, turning toward the vanity mirror cracked like our family portrait. She didn't move, though. Instead, she stepped inside, the door clicking shut behind her with a finality that made my pulse stutter. The room smelled of jasmine from the garden below, and the faint salt of the Mediterranean crashing against the cliffs half a mile away. We'd chosen this villa in Ronda for its isolation, perched on the edge of the gorge like a secret we weren't ready to share. But secrets have a way of spilling out, don't they? "I've been waiting," she said, her voice low, laced with that quiet intensity she'd inherited from her mother, the one who died too young, leaving me to step into shoes that never quite fit. Not her biological mother, God no, but the ghost of her lingered in every hesitant glance Aurora threw my way. I was Elena Vargas, 45, a graphic designer who traded rainy Pacific Northwest skies for this sun-baked exile, marrying Aurora's father on a whim during a sabbatical in Barcelona. He was the American expat cliché, charming, restless, gone before the ink dried on our vows. And me? I'd stayed, because leaving her would have been the real betrayal. Waiting for what? The words hung unspoken as I buttoned up, my fingers trembling against the pearl fasteners. The mirror reflected us side by side now, Aurora taller than me, her frame lean from trail runs along the coastal paths, dressed in that faded blue sundress that hugged her like an old friend. She was Aubrey to her friends back home, a nickname from some college art class where she'd reinvented herself as bolder, freer. But here, in the quiet of our borrowed life, she was Aurora Hale, the girl who'd baked lopsided cookies with me on rainy Seattle afternoons, and now stared at me like I held the map to a heart she'd lost. "I saw the letters," she continued, crossing to the bed where my suitcase lay open, a scatter of envelopes spilling out like fallen leaves. Old letters from her father, postmarked from who knows where, Lisbon, maybe Tangier, full of empty promises and half apologies. I'd meant to burn them last night, after the third glass of Rioja turned my resolve to ash. The ones he wrote to you. About me. About us. My stomach twisted. Those words, scrawled in his looping script, had gutted me anew each time. "Tell her I'm sorry. Tell her I love her. But don't let her wait for me." As if love were a train you could miss. I'd shielded her from them for years, pasting over the cracks with forced smiles and weekend hikes in the Sierra Nevadas. But Spain had stripped us bare. The distance from home amplified every echo. "Aurora, they're nothing. Just ghosts." I reached for her, but she pulled back, not sharply, but enough to carve space between us. Her eyes, those deep pools of brown flecked with gold like the cliffs at sunset, searched mine for lies I'd buried long ago. "Ghosts? Mom, you've been carrying them for me. All this time. Moving here, pretending we're starting over when really you're just holding your breath." She sank onto the edge of the bed, the mattress dipping under her weight, her hands twisting the hem of her dress. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the walls of this old finca were leaning in to listen. I sat beside her, close enough to catch the faint scent of her lavender shampoo, the one we'd splurged on during a market day in Malaga. "I didn't know how to let go," I admitted, the words tumbling out like stones down the gorge outside. "After your dad left, I thought if I could just protect you from the mess, we'd make it. But I see now, honey, I've been protecting myself more." She turned to me then, her face inches from mine, and in that unguarded moment, I saw the woman she'd become. Not the wide-eyed girl who'd clung to me during thunderstorms, but someone fierce, fragile, alive with questions I hadn't dared answer. "And what about you, Elena? Who's protecting you?" The use of my name, not Mom, not even the teasing Ellie from our better days, landed like a slap, gentle but stinging. It reminded me of the chasm that had always existed. I was the intruder in her story, the stepmother who'd arrived with suitcases and stories of her own. A Latina woman from a tight-knit Miami family who traded plantains and salsa for quiet dinners with a grieving teen. We'd bonded over bad rom-coms and shared silences, but beneath it all, there was this undercurrent. A pull I attributed to maternal instinct. Or so I told myself. Outside, the cicadas hummed their endless chorus, a soundtrack to our unraveling. The villa's courtyard fountain trickled faintly through the open window, a reminder of the life we'd curated here. Fresh figs from the tree, evening walks to the plaza where old men played dominoes under string lights. It was supposed to be healing, this transplant to West Spain's rugged beauty, far from the gray drizzle of Seattle and the ghosts of what-ifs. Instead, it had become a pressure cooker for truths we'd ignored. "I don't need protecting," I lied, my hand finding hers despite the distance she'd set. Her skin was warm, callous from sketching in charcoal on rocky outcrops, her fingers curling instinctively around mine. "I've got you." She laughed then, a short bitter sound that echoed off the beamed ceiling. "That's the problem. You've always had me. But what if? What if it's not enough?" Her voice broke on the last word, and she pulled her hand away, standing abruptly to pace the faded Persian rug. The envelopes crunched under her bare feet, forgotten casualties. Enough? The question hung there, heavy as the heat pressing in from the siesta hour. I'd poured everything into her. Nights up worrying over college applications she'd abandoned, mornings brewing café con leche strong enough to wake the dead. But in the quiet hours, when the villa slept and the stars wheeled overhead like indifferent witnesses, I'd felt it. A hollowness that wasn't just widowhood or divorce. It was the ache of loving someone who might never love you back the same way. "Aurora, talk to me. Please." I stood too, closing the gap, my heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. This was the moment we'd skirted for years, the one where the stepmother became something more or less depending on how the light fell. She stopped pacing, facing me with arms crossed like a shield. "I walked in here because I heard you crying last night. Again. And I realized, I can't keep pretending this is normal. It's here alone. It's not just family anymore, Elena. Not for me." The world tilted. Not just family. The words she'd never said aloud, the ones I'd glimpsed in stolen glances during dinner, in the way she'd linger when I brushed her hair back from her fevered brow during that flu last winter. I'd chalked it up to displacement, to the isolation of our expat bubble. But now in the harsh light of truth it stared back at me. Desire tangled with devotion, blooming in the soil of our shared wounds. I swallowed hard, the silk scarf forgotten on the vanity. "What are you saying?" She stepped closer, her breath mingling with mine, the air electric as a storm front rolling in from the Atlantic. "I'm saying I see you. All of you. The woman who stayed when everyone else left. The one who makes me feel safe but also alive. Like I could be more than his daughter. More than the girl who lost everything." My throat tightened, tears pricking hot behind my eyes. This was betrayal's cruelest form. Not from her father, but from the lines we'd drawn to survive. Step, mother, daughter. Words that had armored us, now cracking under the weight of what lay beneath. Before I could respond, she closed the distance, her forehead resting against mine in a gesture so tender it shattered me. "I love you, Elena. Not like a daughter. Like this." The confession hung between us, fragile as the first raindrop before the deluge. Outside, thunder rumbled distant over the gorge, promising the storm we'd both been chasing. We didn't move for what felt like hours, though the grandfather clock in the hall chimed only 3 times, marking the lazy arc of the sun toward the horizon. Aurora's breath was steady against my cheek, a rhythm that synced with my own erratic pulse, her hands now loose at her sides as if afraid one wrong twitch might summon the ghosts back. The villa around us seemed to hold its breath too, the creak of settling beams, the distant call of a hoopoe bird from the cork oak groves, all fading into white noise. This was Rhonda, after all. A town carved from cliffs and history, where secrets etched themselves into the stone like the Puente Nuevo spanning the abyss below. We'd come here seeking solace, but solace was a fickle lover, turning sharp-edged in the light of honesty. I shouldn't have said that, she murmured finally, pulling back just enough to search my face, her brown eyes stormy with regret. Strands of her wavy hair caught the golden light, framing cheeks flushed from the confession's heat. At 22, she was a portrait of contrasts. The soft curve of her lips that still hinted at the girl who'd begged for bedtime stories, juxtaposed against the determined set of her jaw, honed by part-time gigs bartending in the plaza and sketching tourists who never saw the depth in her gaze. "No," I whispered, my voice raw as the gorge winds. "Don't take it back. Not now." My hands found her arms, steadying us both, the fabric of her sundress cool under my palms. I was Elena, the interloper who'd married into her life at 38, a decade after her mother's death from that sudden aneurysm that stole her midlife. I'd loved her father once, or thought I did, in the whirlwind way of second chances, over paella and smoky tapas bars. But love for him had been a placeholder, a bridge to her. Aurora, with her quiet fire and artist's soul, had become the real anchor. She searched my eyes, vulnerability cracking her armor. "But what does it mean? For us? We're not like other families. Out here in this nowhere Spain it's easy to pretend. Back home they'd whisper. Judge. Home. The word evoked Seattle's relentless rain, the cramped craftsman house where we'd stacked books against loneliness, where I'd taught her to drive on slick streets and she'd inked her first tattoo, a tiny olive branch on her wrist, a nod to the life we dreamed of escaping to. We'd sold it all after the divorce, boarding a flight to Malaga with 2 suitcases and a playlist of Joni Mitchell songs. West Spain was our blank canvas. Rugged trails through the Sierra de las Nieves, markets bursting with saffron and almonds, the freedom of anonymity in a land that didn't know our scars. Yet here we were, painting over the lines again. "Let them whisper," I said, fiercer than I felt, echoing the defiance I'd learned from my own Miami abuela, who'd marched in pride parades long before rainbows meant mainstream. "We're Vargas Hale women. We build our own rules." But even as I spoke, doubt gnawed. Was this romance or redemption? The pull toward her had simmered for months, innocent at first, in shared sunsets from the villa's terrace, her laughter cutting through my solitude like sunlight through fog. Then deeper. The night she'd curled against me during a power outage, her head on my shoulder, whispering dreams of galleries in New York where her paintings would hang. I'd lain awake, heart aching with a love too vast for labels. Aurora's laugh was soft, disbelieving. "You sound like one of those indie films we binge-watched. The ones with the messy queer leads who end up okay." She stepped back, running a hand through her hair, the gesture pulling her dress taut across her shoulders. Aubrey, her alter ego, would have quipped something snarky here, deflecting with humor. But Aurora, the real her, let the silence stretch, heavy with possibility. We wandered out to the terrace then, the stone tiles warm underfoot, overlooking the gorge where the Guadalevin River snaked like a silver vein through emerald valleys. The air carried hints of wild thyme and distant wood smoke from village chimneys. I poured us glasses of chilled vermentino from the clay jug, the condensation beating like tears. We sat on the wrought iron chairs, legs brushing accidentally, or not, as the sky bruised purple. "Tell me about the letters," she said after a sip, her voice steadier now. "What did he say that hurt so much?" I hesitated, swirling the wine, its legs tracing slow paths down the glass like memories reluctant to fade. "He said he couldn't be the father she deserved, that you'd be better off without him dragging you down. And then, he asked me to let you go, to encourage you to stay in the States, build a life without his shadow." Her face crumpled just for a second, before she schooled it into that artist's mask, observant, detached. "And you didn't. You brought me here instead. Because I couldn't let you go." The admission slipped out raw and unfiltered. "Not after everything. Your mom's gone, he's vanished like smoke, and I'm all you've got. Or so I thought." She set her glass down, leaning forward, elbows on knees. "You're more than that, Elena. You've always been. Remember that summer in the Cascades? When we hiked to that alpine lake, and you told me stories about your abuela's Santeria rituals? How love isn't a straight line but a spiral, coming back around stronger." Her eyes held mine, gold flecks catching the dying light. I think I fell for you then. Not the stepmom version. The real you. Spiraling back. My chest tightened, a sob caught in my throat. That hike, 3 years ago pre-Spain, had been our turning point, away from the divorce's debris. We'd swum naked in the frigid water, laughing like fools, her body a blur of youth and grace against the pines. I'd averted my eyes then, blaming propriety. Now the memory bloomed differently, laced with the what-ifs I'd suppressed. But betrayal, Aurora. If we cross this, what about trust? I'm supposed to guide you, not complicate. She reached across the small table, her fingers tracing mine. Life's already complicated. Dad's letters? That's betrayal. Leaving us to fend for echoes. It's the opposite. It's choosing. The sun dipped then, painting the gorge in fire, and we talked as dusk fell, about her abandoned art degree, the gallery rejections that stung like salt and wounds, about my stalled career, designs gathering dust on a hard drive while I freelanced logos for local wineries. Laughter wove in, tentative at first, then freer. Her mimicking the old senora next door's endless gossip, me recounting the time I'd botched paella and set off the smoke alarm. It was catharsis, this unraveling. The terrace, our confessional under emerging stars. Night brought dinner, simple gazpacho and pan con tomate from the market, eaten by lantern light. She sketched while I read aloud from a battered copy of The Price of Salt, the words mirroring our quiet tension. Highsmith's lovers, trapped in societal webs, felt too close, too prescient. Aurora's pencil paused mid-stroke, her gaze lifting. Do you think they make it because they fight? Or because they forgive? Forgive themselves, maybe, I replied, closing the book. For wanting what they want. She nodded, setting the sketchpad aside. A rough outline of the gorge, with 2 figures on the bridge, hands entwined. Then let's forgive. Starting now. We cleared the dishes in companionable silence, the clink of pottery a gentle underscore. Inside, the villa's halls glowed with beeswax candles, shadows dancing like hesitant partners. In the living room, with its threadbare tapestries and shelves of dog-eared paperbacks, she pulled me into a dance. No music, just the rhythm of our breaths. Her arms around my waist, mine on her shoulders. We swayed, bodies aligning in a way that felt inevitable, profound. No rush, no heat beyond the warmth of proximity. It was intimacy reborn step by tender step. But dawn brought the first fracture. A letter arrived by post the next morning. Another from him, postmarked Madrid, pleading for reconciliation. I've changed. Come home. Both of you. Aurora read it over my shoulder, her body stiffening against mine in the kitchen, the scent of fresh espresso turning bitter. He's lying, she spat, crumpling it. Always has. Yet doubt crept in, a serpent in our fragile Eden. That afternoon, as we wandered the cobbled streets of Ronda, past bullring shadows and flower-draped balconies, I caught her staring at her phone, texts from old friends in Seattle, whispers of normalcy we'd left behind. What if he's right? She murmured by the Mirador, wind whipping her hair. What if we're just running again? The question lodged like a thorn. Conflict brewed, slow as gathering clouds, as we returned to the villa. Dinner was strained, words clipped over plates of grilled sardines. She retired early, door clicking shut, leaving me with the gorge's whisper and a heart heavy with unspoken fears. By midnight I couldn't sleep. The betrayal wasn't his alone. It was ours, in the wanting that threatened to consume us. I slipped into her room, moonlight silvering the quilts, finding her awake, tears streaking her face. Elena, she whispered, sitting up. I can't lose you too. We clung then, not as lovers yet, but as survivors, the high tide of emotion crashing over us. But tides recede, and with morning came the storm's edge. Her decision to call him, to confront the ghost head-on. Me? I braced for the deluge, knowing love's true test isn't the fall, but the climb back. The call came at noon, sharp as the church bells tolling from the Santa Maria la Mayor across the gorge. Aurora paced the villa's kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, her free hand gripping the back of a wooden chair until her knuckles blanched. I hovered in the doorway, arms crossed against the chill that had nothing to do with the autumn nip creeping into West Spain's air. Outside, mist clung to the olive branches like unspent tears, muting the world to grays and greens. This was the climax we'd courted, the moment where words could mend or maim, where the man who'd fathered her and fleetingly husbanded me would either bridge the chasm or widen it forever. Yeah, Dad. It's me. Aurora. Her voice was steel-wrapped in silk, that artist's poise masking the tremor I knew too well. She glanced my way, brown eyes pleading for anchor, and I nodded, stepping closer to pour her a glass of water from the terracotta pitcher. The liquid trembled as she took it, sipping like it might steady the storm inside. On the other end, his voice crackled through the speaker, familiar baritone, laced with that salesman charm he'd wielded to win boardrooms and hearts alike. Kid, oh God, it's good to hear you. I've been thinking about you every damn day. About us. The word landed like gravel in my gut. There was no us anymore. Not the fractured trio we'd been. But Aurora, ever the bridge builder, pressed on. The letters. You told Elena to let me go. To send me back without you. What the hell was that? Silence stretched, broken only by static and the distant rumble of a truck on the cliffside road. When he spoke, regret colored his tone, genuine or rehearsed. I couldn't tell. I was drowning back then, Rory. The business tanked, your mom. She was always the strong one. I thought giving you space, a fresh start with Elena, she's solid, you know? Would be mercy. Not abandonment. Mercy. She laughed, sharp and hollow, sinking into the chair. Her sundress pulled around her like spilled ink, chestnut waves falling forward to curtain her face. You vanished, Dad. Left us to pick up your pieces. Elena sold everything, our house, her studio, to keep me afloat. And now you waltz back with I've changed? I watched her, this woman who'd bloomed under my uneven care. From the sullen teen slamming doors in Seattle to the fierce creator capturing Rhonda's light in strokes of ochre and azure. Aubrey emerged in flashes during her rants, that bold pseudonym fueling her fire. But here, raw and exposed, she was all Aurora, vulnerable, valiant. He backpedaled, voice pitching higher. I know I screwed up. Royally. That's why I'm in Madrid, starting over with a consultancy. Stable gig. Come see me. Bring Elena. We can be a family again. The offer dangled, seductive as forbidden fruit. Family. The word we'd chased across oceans, only to find it shape-shifting in the Spanish sun. Aurora's eyes met mine, gold flecks dimmed by turmoil, and in that gaze I saw the betrayal anew. Not just his but the risk of ours. If she went, chasing paternal phantoms, what of the spiral we'd begun? The love that defied labels, rooted in forgiveness and fire? She muted the phone, hand over the mic. He sounds. Sorry. What do I do, Elena? My heart fractured at the plea. I knelt beside her, hand on her knee, the gesture maternal yet laced with more. A quiet claim on the life we'd forged. You tell him your truth. Whatever it costs. We're stronger for it. Unmuting, she straightened. Dad, I appreciate the olive branch. Really. But family's not a pit stop. It's the road. And mine's here now with Elena. We've built something real. You hurt us, but we're healing. On our terms. His response was a jumble. Apologies tumbling over excuses. Promises of visits, therapy, anything to salvage. But Aurora held firm, her voice softening to sorrow. I love you. Always will. But I can't wait anymore. Goodbye, Dad. She hung up, the click echoing like a door slamming on yesterday. Tears came then, hot and unbidden, and she folded into me, sobs racking her frame against my chest. I held her on the tiled floor, rocking gently, murmuring nonsense in Spanglish. Mi amor está bien, we've got this. The kitchen clock ticked onward, indifferent to our quake, while outside the mist lifted, revealing the gorge in crisp relief. Hours blurred into evening. We walked the trails then, hand in hand, the path winding through cork oaks where wild goats grazed unperturbed. The air hummed with post-rain freshness, earthworms scenting the soil, and as we crested a ridge overlooking the valley, Aurora stopped, turning to me with eyes cleared of storm clouds. That was the hardest thing I've ever done, she said, squeezing my hand. Her fingers intertwined with mine, calluses from charcoal brushes rough against my smoother skin. At 45, I felt every line etched by sun and sorrow. Crow's feet from squinting at designs, laugh lines deepened by her joy. But in her gaze I was whole. You were brave, I replied, brushing away from her forehead. Braver than me. She shook her head, stepping closer until our foreheads touched again. Echoes of that first confession. We both were. Together. The kiss that followed was tentative, A brush of lips like testing tide pools, soft, exploratory, tasting of salt and vermentino from lunch. No urgency, just the profound seal of choice. Lovers at last in the full light of day. Days folded into weeks, a rhythm of rediscovery. Mornings sketching on the terrace, her head in my lap as I read poetry. Federico Garcia Lorca's gypsy ballads, their passion mirroring our quiet blaze. Afternoons hiking to hidden coves, where we'd swim in the chill Mediterranean. Emerging laughing, water-sheened and alive. Evenings cooking, her chopping garlic with theatrical flair. Me stirring saffron rice while stealing glances that lingered longer now. Conflict lingered too in subtle fissures. A package arrived from Seattle. Her old sketchbooks, forwarded by a friend, filled with drawings of us. Pre-confession, innocent portraits that now read like foreshadowing. Flipping through, she paused at one. Me by the villa window, light haloing my auburn hair, captioned home. I knew even then, she whispered, tracing the lines. But doubt shadowed her joy. Nightmares of abandonment woke her sweating, clinging to me in the dark. My own wounds surfaced in quieter ways. The freelance drought worsening. Emails from stateside clients laced with condescension. Miss the American touch, Elena? Isolation gnawed, amplified by Rhonda's insularity, where expats clustered like olives in a jar. One night, over glasses of manzanilla sherry, it spilled. What if this is just another escape? What if we fade here like forgotten expats? Aurora set her glass down, fierce. Then we fight. Like Lorca's lovers, defiant, even in chains. She pulled me to the bedroom, not for passion's fire, but for vulnerability's hearth. Stripping to vulnerabilities, sharing stories under quilts stitched by local artisanas. I confessed my fear of inadequacy. The stepmother who'd never birthed, only borrowed love. She bared her terror of inheritance. His restlessness, a gene she feared blooming wild. In those confessions, betrayal transmuted to balm. His letters. We burned them in the courtyard fire pit. Ashes scattering on winds that carried them to the gorge, a ritual of release. Friends back home, hers from art collectives, mine from design co-ops, offered tentative support via video calls, their faces pixelated but kind. Love who lights you up, chicas. The climax crested unexpectedly. A month later, during the village's autumn feria. Lanterns strung across the plaza like fireflies, accordions wailing flamenco rhythms that pulsed through cobblestones. We'd danced before as family, but tonight as partners, her hand in mine swaying to Zamba beats, skirts swirling in unison. Whispers rippled from shadowed corners. The Americanas closer than kin. A drunk expat leered, slurring judgments. Unnatural, that. And for a heartbeat old fears flared. Aurora stiffened, but I pulled her tighter, spinning us away. Let them talk. I murmured into her ear, breath warm against her lobe. We're the story now. She smiled then, radiant, and we danced till dawn, feet sore and hearts full. Back at the villa, collapsing onto the bed in exhausted tangle, she traced my collarbone. This is humanistic, isn't it? Messy real. Not fairy tale, but earned. Earned. The word encapsulated our arc. From hook of intrusion to this quiet harbor. No grand tragedy, but a happy laced with hard-won truth. Love as spiral, betrayal as teacher, healing in the choosing. Winter softened into spring, the gorge greening anew. Aurora's paintings sold at a local co-op, gorges alive with hidden embraces, earning her a Madrid showcase invite. I relaunched my portfolio, infusing designs with Spanish motifs and personal fire, landing a stateside contract that bridged our worlds without demanding return. We stayed in Ronda, the villa our route, but visited him once, in a sun-dappled Madrid cafe, conversation halting but hopeful. He met my eyes with quiet respect, hers with paternal ache, parting with hugs that lingered, not as fixes but steps. In the end, the unexpected talk that began in half-undone buttons wove us tighter. Stepdaughter no more, but beloved, equal in the dance. Under Andalusian stars we'd whisper futures, perhaps a New York jaunt, or Miami sands with my familia. Always circling back to this, our chosen home. Wounds healed not by erasure, but embroidery. Threads of forgiveness, desire, defiance stitching us whole. And in the quiet mornings, her head on my shoulder, I'd think. This is America in our bones, bold, bruised, unbreakable. Even here in Spain's Wild West.